I don't know. Okay. I don't think I got all of this.
How come your light flashing on the front of that?
I don't know.
Viewer discretion is advised for this educational documentary. Welcome back to CASE Documentaries. I bring you true crime, disturbing stories and other things that you may later regret knowing with regular uploads every week. Please do join the quickly growing, incredibly supportive CASE family by hitting subscribe now and turning on notifications. Thank you so much to all of my patrons. If your name is on screen right now, then you're a legend. Our love and respect goes out to all those affected by this dark case. Rolf Tiede was born in Germany on September 29th, 1939. He immigrated to the United States with his mother when he was 11 years old. Kay Tidwell was born in Nevada on January 16th, 1941, to her parents Eugene and Beth Tidwell. Rolf and Kay got married on May 24th, 1963 in Salt Lake City, Utah, but soon moved to Humble, Texas. The newlyweds were active and devout members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and they had dreams of starting a big family. Unfortunately though, they struggled to get pregnant. Therefore, they adopted their first child, a daughter named Lene. 3 years later, they adopted their son Sean. But within just a few weeks of this adoption, the Tiede family realized that Kay was now 2 months pregnant with a baby girl they named Trisha. At this time, Rolf had been working as a salesman. He was soon able to open his business, Skyline Equipment Incorporated, in Houston, Texas in 1969. The Tiede family owned a remote cabin in Oakley, Utah, a cabin they would visit every year around Christmas. They referred to the cabin as Tiede's Tranquility. This was because it was in such a remote and peaceful location, and they had formed so many fond holiday memories there. In the 1990s, Oakley, Utah only had a population of around 600 people. It was known to be a very safe place. In fact, in the previous 100 years, there had only been one violent crime in that area. This was a shooting that was the result of road rage. The Tiede's cabin was located 4 kilometers, roughly 2.5 miles, from the nearest road, so the family could only access it by parking their car on the road and riding a snowmobile to the cabin. So, just like they did every holiday season, the Tiedes planned a trip to the cabin in December of 1990. On December 20th, Kay and Sean flew from Texas to Utah. At the airport, they met up with Kay's sister, Claudia, who was waiting there to give them a ride. Rolf and his 2 daughters planned to fly in the next day and meet up with the others. So Kay, Sean and Claudia drove to the cabin and parked the car. They loaded all of their belongings onto the snowmobiles and then headed to the cabin. When they were around halfway to the cabin, the trio passed a man. They described him as being in his 20s. And only wearing tennis shoes, jeans and a light jacket. This was despite the below freezing temperatures and the rough terrain on the snowy mountainsides. Kay decided to stop and make sure the man was okay, asking if he needed any help. The man didn't even acknowledge them, however. He just walked away without saying anything. Kay, Sean and Claudia didn't think too much of the interaction. They continued up the mountain to the cabin. After unloading their supplies, the 3 had dinner together, and Claudia then decided to spend the night with them in the cabin. The following day, Rolf arrived with his 2 daughters, Lene, who was 22 at the time, and Trisha, who was now 16. Before Rolf and the girls headed up on a snowmobile, Kay told Rolf about the strange interaction with the man the previous day. She asked Rolf if he could bring the shotguns with him when they came. Rolf, however, didn't think this was necessary. He reminded Kay of how safe the area actually was. but Kay insisted and Rolf finally agreed. That same morning, Claudia left the cabin to go into town. There, she planned to do some last-minute Christmas shopping before the family party in a few days. Once the rest of the family arrived to the cabin, they spent their time wrapping presents. They set up the Christmas tree and stockings, and they prepared for the party ahead. But soon, they also went into town to stock up on some more supplies. Once they finished their errands in town and were about to head back to the cabin, Sean decided that he wanted to spend the night at his Aunt Claudia's house. So the family dropped him off before then heading to Kay's mother Beth's home, where the rest of the family would be spending the night. Kay's mother, Beth Potts, was 72 years old at the time. She was said to always be in good spirits. This was despite losing much of her eyesight and a good deal of her mobility after a car accident in 1983. The following day, December the 22nd, at around noon, Kay, Lene and Beth headed back to the cabin. When the trio arrived, Kay noticed a shadow through the master bedroom window. She was excited, thinking her cousin David had arrived to the cabin early to surprise the family. Lene ran inside the cabin to warm up her hands under some hot water. She now noticed the figure inside the cabin, this time from behind the refrigerator. Lene laughed to herself, waiting for her mother's cousin David to pop out from behind the fridge and surprise her. However, it was not David behind the fridge, and the next thing Lene knew, a man with frizzy hair was standing in front of her, pointing a firearm directly at her. The man forced Lene to call her mother and grandmother upstairs, and as Kay helped Beth up the stairs, another intruder appeared. He was described as wearing thick glasses. The second man held a gun to Kay and Beth. Kay pleaded with the men, telling them she would give them anything if they would just let her family live. But without hesitation, the frizzy-haired man turned his gun on Kay. He immediately pulled the trigger. He then did the same to Beth, once in the head and again in the back when she tried to get up. The two men dragged Lene into one of the bedrooms. There they duct taped a sock into her mouth and tied up her hands and feet. The man with glasses then brought the family dog into the room with Lene. They then went back out to Kay and Beth's bodies. There they took any jewelry and money that was on them, before then bringing the bodies to the patio and covering them in snow. At around 2:45 that afternoon, Rolf and Tricia arrived at the cabin. When they pulled up, the man with the frizzy hair held a firearm to Lene. They forced her out to the front of the cabin. While the man with the thick glasses held Rolf and Tricia at gunpoint, they forced them to empty their pockets. Rolf gave the man $105 in cash that he had in his pockets, and he pleaded with them to take anything they wanted. The man holding Lene ordered the other to kill Rolf. The man with the glasses cocked his gun, but couldn't bring himself to pull the trigger. The man with the frizzy hair then turned his gun to Rolf and attempted to pull the trigger, but his gun didn't fire. He tried another time, and again it didn't go off. But the third time he pulled the trigger, the gun fired whilst it was pointed at Rolf's face. The two men then took the Tiede's gas cans they used to fill up their snowmobiles and poured gasoline all over the cabin. This was their attempt to destroy evidence by setting the house on fire. After covering the cabin in gasoline, the two men went back out to Rolf. One aimed their gun at the back of his head and pulled the trigger, before covering his body in gasoline as well. After setting the cabin on fire, the men instructed Lene and Tricia to load their stolen valuables onto the snowmobiles and drive them down to the road. This was a location where the family's cars were parked. While the four of them headed back down the mountain, they happened to pass the girls' uncle, Randy. He assumed that the girls knew the two boys with them. Randy waved at them, but the girls ignored him, thinking that if the men knew that Randy was part of their family, they would try to murder him too. Once they got to the family's Lincoln town car that was parked on the road, the men ordered the girls to load the items from the snowmobiles into the trunk. The men told them that they were going to drive the car to New York, and that they would let the girls go once they arrived there. However, understandably, Lene and Trisha did not believe the men. But they also felt that they didn't have any other choice but to go along with their plan. When the four of them got into the car and began driving, they passed the girl's uncle Randy again. He was also driving down the road. He was motioning to the girls and yelling at them to stop, but they continued to ignore him. When the men asked if they knew Randy, the girls maintained that they didn't know him, hoping that this would save his life. Randy, however, could tell something was very wrong. Not long after the girls and their captors passed Randy, a man on a snowmobile started coming towards him. He noticed that the man was not dressed for the below freezing temperatures. He was not wearing a helmet, shoes, or a jacket. He also noticed that the man had injuries to his face. As the man got closer, Randy could see that his face was swollen and crimson. Once the man on the snowmobile caught up to Randy, he got off and started to approach him. That is when he realized that the injured man was his brother, Rolf. Rolf filled Randy in on the events that had just happened. He told Randy that, after he was shot and doused in gasoline, he laid on the ground and pretended to be dead, waiting for the men to leave. Once he heard the snowmobiles leave, he went to the cabin and tried to put out the fire. But he said it was spreading so quickly that he couldn't do it. And in the process, part of his clothing even ended up catching fire whilst he was in there. Randy placed Rolf in the back seat of his car and sped down the road. He was trying to call 911, but the reception was too poor in this remote part of town. His call, luckily though, was eventually able to connect. He then told the 911 operator everything that had just happened. He told them where the girls went, what car they were in, and requested a helicopter for his injured brother. He amazingly managed to get all of this out before his phone died. Randy then pulled into a gas station to use their payphone to call 911 once again. While this was happening, the girls were riding in their stolen car with the men. A police car then passed them and made a U-turn to start following. This made the men nervous and resulted in them starting a high-speed police chase. However, the car eventually spun out and got stuck on a snowbank. Luckily, the two men surrendered to the police without too much issue. Meanwhile, a helicopter managed to get to Rolf and bring him to the hospital. There, amazingly, he was able to recover completely. When the police were able to make it to the cabin, they described the scene as a war zone. Among the mess, they found a videotape that had been recorded by the two killers. This showed how they passed their time in the house before the family returned. Before the Tiede family arrived, the two men had spent some time in the cabin eating food, opening presents and looking for valuables. This is the real footage that they captured themselves with the Tiede family's camcorder.
I don't know. Okay. I don't think I got all of this.
How come your light flashing on the front of that?
I don't know.
Find out.
How am I supposed to find out?
Where's the instructions? And Lene. Come on, CASE document. Oh wow.
What is it?
Baseball card.
Okay. Let's see a couple of them.
Oh, there's football and basketball.
Show them this way. Turn them this way. Okay. Next page.
The police were able to identify the perpetrators as 22-year-old Edward Deli. This was the man wearing the thick glasses, and 26-year-old Von Taylor, who was the man with the frizzy hair. The pair met when they were in a halfway house together after being released from prison for unrelated crimes of aggravated burglary and arson. The two left the halfway house before their official release date, and they then hitchhiked to Oakley. This was because Von Taylor's father also happened to own a cabin in the area. They spent the week before the Tiede family's murders burglarizing other houses nearby. They even scoped out the Tiede's cabin on December the 20th. Von Taylor was the man that Kay was suspicious of, the day that she was riding a snowmobile with Claudia and Sean. On January the 22nd of 1991, the two men were arraigned. They were each charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted first-degree murder, and 2 counts of aggravated kidnapping, aggravated assault, theft, arson, and failure to heed a police signal. Both Von Taylor and Edward Deli pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. 5 months later, Taylor pleaded guilty to the 2 counts of capital murder in exchange for the other charges being dropped. He was sentenced to death for both counts. Edward, however, did not plead guilty and went to trial 2 weeks after Taylor was sentenced. His defense was that Taylor was the ringleader and told Deli what to do. His lawyer supported this defense by showing that Deli refused to kill Rolf when Taylor told him to, and that he tried to comfort Lene by bringing a dog into the room with her. After 12 hours of deliberation, the jury decided that Edward Deli was guilty of second-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. Neither Edward Deli nor Von Taylor knew that Rolf had survived the attack. They were, to say the least, very surprised to see him standing in the courtroom. Do you think the punishment fits the crime here? What do you think could be done to avoid something like this happening again in the future? Please do let me know down in the comments. Be careful out there, and I'll see you soon.